Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to share with you prepping pages, the pros and cons of it in your Bible journaling. But before I do that, if you haven't already, you can follow me across social media. Those links are going to be down in the description box below. Also, while you're down there, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, the thumbs up button always helps. So starting off, I am using the Unashamed Bible Journaling stamp set from Joy Claire Stamps. This is from their Color by Face series. I'm also going to be using the clear gesso. This is the matte translucent clear gesso from the Crafters Workshop. All the supplies, every color of watercolor I'm using today, that's all going to be listed down in the description box. So if you have any questions, you can head down there and find all those answers. So to put on my gesso today, I am using a foam brush. I find this works best for me. You have to use a light hand because as your Bible pages get kind of wet with the moisture from the gesso, they do get a little frail. So just handle them carefully so you don't get any rips or tears. But I like to use the foam brush because this gives me the least amount of stroke marks. You're going to see later on what I mean by stroke marks. So once I get this on, I do have a piece of computer paper behind it, but I don't want this to be kind of stuck to that computer paper when it dries. So I'm going to go ahead and very carefully lift up that Bible page. Again, it's still wet, so you have to be careful. It's super frail right now. I'll go ahead and pull out that paper that's been wet and put a new one behind there. This way, it's just going to dry the page. It's not going to get stuck to the one behind it or to that old piece of paper. And that brings me to my first con, which is planning ahead with this. Because you have to account for that dry time of the gesso, you do need to plan ahead whenever you're making your pages. So it's not kind of spur of the moment, I want to go ahead and create. You need to allow this to dry before you can work on it. So once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and start heat embossing on this. This is dried fully, but you can see the paper has kind of warped on the edges. That is another con. Your pages will get a little curled along the edges, but it is a quick fix just by using a small craft iron with a piece of paper over the top of it. Don't iron straight on the gesso, or just close your Bible once it's dry and put a heavy weight, something heavy on top of it, and that will get some of those wrinkles out as well. I'm going to go ahead and start stamping on my page. I did prep my surface with my embossing bag, and I'm going to start stamping this first mass down. I'm going to use the same mass both times, and I'm going to go ahead and do some heat embossing. So I'm stamping with Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink that just holds onto that embossing powder. And I'm using some black sparkle embossing powder, which is just, it's so pretty and perfect for the page I'm using today. I like to go ahead and sprinkle it on and have some paper, computer paper underneath that's going to catch all that extra embossing powder that I need to kind of dust off. Now right under that first mass that I stamped, I'm going to go ahead and stamp another one very quickly, again using that same Versamark ink, which is the clear sticky embossing ink. It's my favorite one to use when I'm doing any embossing. Now right over that paper again, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on some more embossing powder. I haven't done any heat setting yet. I like to do a few images and then go ahead and heat set. That way I don't apply as much heat to my page. Now you can see as I'm doing my heat embossing, or as I'm putting on the embossing powder, I am getting embossing powder everywhere. That's just kind of the nature whenever you do Bible journaling, unless you have a huge kind of box underneath or a huge piece of paper, maybe like a piece of poster board or something if you have that big a space. But I'm going to show you how easy this is to clean up. I have a little trick that I like to use. On each side of my mask, I'm going to go ahead and stamp these little kind of ribbons. I'm stamping 2 on each side, and again, using Versamark ink. Now, before I started stamping again, I did heat set those masks, and I prepped my surface again with my embossing bag. I stamped 2 ribbons on each side of the mask, applied some more of that black sparkle embossing powder, and I heat set that. That is kind of the finished product that I'm going to go ahead and watercolor here. You can see that that sparkle embossing powder really does have quite a bit of glitter in it. Now, because it has glitter in it, it's kind of a pain to clean up, but if you just take a lint roller and roll it across your surface, that's going to grab everything. It's going to grab the glitter, it's going to grab the embossing powder. Super easy to use, and these you can find at your grocery store, kind of anywhere really. And they're normally for like pet hair, but I love to use them for glitter and embossing powder cleanup or sequins that kind of get out of control sometimes. It really is one of my favorite tools in my craft room. So on to watercoloring the image now. The watercolors do blend so much better on a gesso or a prepped Bible journaling page, in my opinion. Whenever I'm watercoloring on a straight page, it will not blend for me very well at all. Whenever you prep your pages and you go in to do watercoloring on top of these, the colors move around like they're supposed to. They pick up right off the page. They don't bleed into the fibers of the page. It really does just work so much better. So that is one of the main pros I would say across this. There's also another one that I'll show you at the very end of the video. For my watercoloring today, I am using my Memento markers. This is just a very quick way for me to watercolor. Plus, when I watercolor, I really do prefer using markers, whether it be my Artisas, my Memento markers, whatever. I feel like I have more control over it and I get a better result because I am not that great at watercoloring. I watercolored both masks and I watercolored both runes on each mask, but I thought it was still a little plain, so I grabbed a lighter blue marker. I'm putting just a little bit on the outside of the mask, kind of where your white space would be, and I'm just going to quickly blend this out. Now, I am using not very much water here. You don't have to be super careful when you prep your pages, but you don't want to oversaturate them either. So I like to use a water brush like I'm using here. That way I have a little bit more control over the water that I'm putting on. I find these easier. If you find a water brush or a regular brush and dipping it in water easier, by all means use that. There's a closer look at both images of this kind of put together. But that last image leads me to my next con, which is that the brush strokes from the gesso are visible in your coloring. It's just going to happen. You can't get this completely smooth. It's just one of those things where you kind of need to roll with the texture that's on the paper and let it be a part of the page instead of trying to fight against it. For my finishing touch on this page, I'm going to go ahead and add this little sentiment, I guess you would call it, right up in the top right hand corner. It says, "I find my true identity in you." I'm stamping that in VersaFine Clear ink in the color Nocturne. There is a closer look at the finished page all put together. Very, very simple, but I do love the way it turned out. Now here is my very final pro for this. And the main one, in my opinion, you do not get the bleed through. The gesso really controls that. You're not going to get the bleed through from your inks. You're not going to get it from your watercolors. It really is the main purpose, in my opinion, for prepping your pages. So do I think you need to prep all your pages? Absolutely not. I'm not going to. But when I watercolor or when I'm using a dye ink that I know is going to bleed through, like here you can see my dye ink bled through very badly on this page, I'm going to go ahead and take the time and prep my surface. Here is my main bleed through. Now these I used Distress inks on, and I did use some markers on that as well. So this would be very similar to what I would get using my Memento markers had I not prepped my page. You can see just how bad the bleed through does get, and I didn't have any with this page. So that's going to be the main purpose for me choosing to prep my pages. But by all means, if you find it easier to work on prep pages, go ahead and prep them. Just remember that you need to account for the dry time and you need to go ahead and work with the texture that's going to be added to your pages. Also, not a huge one. Your pages are going to curl slightly, but that's an easy fix. That is going to do it for me today. I'm going to have one last photo here, and then there are going to be some links on the left side of your screen that you can click on if you want to watch more videos from me. You can also subscribe to my channel over there as well. Don't forget to check out all the information down in the description box. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.